3 o'clock on the East Coast, noon in Washington State, where we're hearing from the girl who says her friend pushed her off a bridge.
When I hit the water, I was definitely awake and aware. I could have died easily.
And her sister says the pusher should pay. A big day in the Russia investigation. The so-called Manhattan Madam testifying before a grand jury. And the special counsel's team apparently wrapping up its case. Well, we thought they were going to wrap up their case, but the prosecution did not wrap. Many surprises and a mystery delay from the Manafort trial outside D.C. This morning, that mystery delay shut the whole thing down for 5 hours. Now they're back and we'll tell you what's happened. Plus, how you could win a golden ticket to free McDonald's for life. Let's get to it.
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
And first from the Fox News deck this Friday afternoon, the teenage girl who you may have heard about surviving, getting pushed off a bridge and falling 50 feet into a river is now talking about what happened. She says she could have easily drowned, but a group of people nearby helped her, including an off-duty EMT. Cell phone video of the push has gone viral.
3, no, I won't go in. 2.
Well, she's saying no.
No, I just...
Ready?
3, no, I won't go in. 2.
50 feet. The girl who fell into the water is 16-year-old Jordan Holgerson. Doctors say that she has 5 cracked ribs and a collapsed lung. Jordan says the person who pushed her was a friend. She says the two of them climbed up to the Molten Falls Bridge near Vancouver in Washington, which is just north of the Oregon border. The bridge is apparently a popular place to jump, even though there are signs warning, don't jump. The teenager says she thought about doing it, but when she backed out at the very last second, her friend pushed her. She described what that moment was like.
In the air, I think I might have fainted, but when I hit the water, I was definitely awake and aware.
Witnesses say she landed face down in the water, similar to a belly flop. So far, we haven't heard from the person who did the pushing. Trace Gallagher on Fox Top Story. Trace, what more do we know?
Well, we know that at first, the reason Jordan Holgerson wanted to jump ship is because she saw her friend do it just minutes before. But at the last minute, when she realized just how high she was, she decided against it. And then Holgerson told a Portland affiliate that she was up on the bridge with her adult family friend and said, quoting here, she, meaning the friend, was counting down. But I didn't think anything of it. And I was like, no, don't count down. Like, won't go if you count down. I'm not ready. And then she pushed me. Watch again.
3, no, I won't go in. 2.
Well, she's saying no.
No, I just...
Ready?
Yeah, you could hear the teen say she no longer wanted to jump. Holgerson says she doesn't remember much of the fall, except that she was trying to change her body position in the air. Listen to her.
I could have died easily. In the air, I was trying to push myself forward so I could be like straight up and down so that my feet hit first, but that didn't really work.
No, it didn't really work. She hit the water face first, breaking ribs, puncturing a lung, and even getting air bubbles in her chest. People thought when she surfaced that she was fine, but then she started drowning. And fortunately, an off-duty paramedic swam out to rescue her. The trauma team that treated Jordan says 50% of people die when you fall that high, and the teen is lucky she wasn't paralyzed. Listen to them.
She fell underwater, which people might say is not that bad because it's water, but when you're falling that high, from that height, the water is like concrete.
As for the woman who pushed Holgerson, she has since apologized, but the teen's sister says the woman should face consequences. The Clark County Sheriff's Office says they are conducting a criminal investigation. Holgerson has now been advised by police not to say anything else about what happened. And even though there are warning signs that say no jumping or diving, that hasn't stopped many people. In fact, authorities say so far this summer there have been numerous injuries. Firefighters have even responded to a record number of calls from the 50 to 60-foot bridge, including a man pulled from the water unconscious. As for Holgerson, she should be out of the hospital in a couple of days, but it's going to be a while before she's back to 100%. Shep.
Trace, thanks. Caroline Polisi's here, criminal defense attorney. Is this a crime?
It definitely could be a crime. One thing is for sure, she will be facing civil liability for payment for the girl's treatment. Obviously, the medical bills are going to be high from that. But definitely, police are going to investigate whether or not there was an intention behind this pushing. It seems like, I know, but I mean, in terms of a crime being committed, the question is whether or not it was reckless or whether or not it was intentional. And, you know, obviously it was an intentional push, but the question is what was the impact behind the push. So it could go either way.
You know, you jump or you dive with that thought to penetrate the water in such a way that you don't break yourself. That's one thing. Right. But this kind of looks like, not passing judgment, this isn't a court, but you look at the video, I don't know about you at home, kind of looked like some dude just went, sorry, not thinking, as kids do.
But reckless behavior can in fact be criminal behavior. So, you know, we're talking like a manslaughter charge, for example. That's the reckless infliction of a homicide on somebody without necessarily the malice of forethought. That's sort of the technical term you use in the law. So, you know, very well they could have just been playing a game, but reckless behavior still has to be prosecuted.
Yeah, she's pretty banged up.
Yeah.
Great to see you, Caroline.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
A mystery delay in the Manafort trial this morning. Just about 9:30 East Coast time, an unexplained recess in the bank fraud and tax fraud trial of President's one-time campaign manager, Paul Manafort. Then about an hour later, the judge brought back the jury, reminded them to keep an open mind and follow all instructions, and then Judge T.S. Ellis, who's been moving this case along at what legal analysts call breakneck speed, announced the court would be dark until afternoon so that the judge could do something else. We know not what. Before the delay, we were led to believe that the prosecution would rest its case really soon and that the defense would take over. Well, trial was scheduled to resume at 1:45 Eastern Time. It finally did just before 2:30, but without any explanation for what had been going on all day. And instead of the prosecution resting, it called another witness. The feds say President Trump's former campaign chairman was the mastermind of a multi-million-dollar scheme to evade U.S. tax and banking laws. He faces more than a dozen charges connected to the lobbying that he did for a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine. Manafort pleaded not guilty to everything. And Peter Ducey is at the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside Washington. I understand the prosecution continued when court resumed, but what happened?
Well, initially when the judge said, Mr. Andres, the prosecutor, you can call your next witness, the prosecutor pointed out, what about the jury? The jury hadn't even come in yet. But they brought the jury in. The first witness sat down. His name is Dennis Rayco. He was given immunity to testify, and he's formerly a banker with the Chicago-based Federal Savings Bank. He is alleging right now that there was some quid pro quo at play while Paul Manafort was in charge of the Trump campaign. This witness just testified that he knew his boss, CEO Stephen Koch, was interested in politics, so eventually Koch participates in a meeting with Paul Manafort. He expresses that he'd be interested in helping serve the Trump campaign, and this witness just said that the day after he expressed that to Manafort, the bank that he ran approved a $16 million loan for Paul Manafort. The witness says he's never seen a loan get approved that fast. Later on, Manafort emailed this witness, Dennis Rayco, asking for Stephen Koch, his boss's resume, and that is notable because earlier in the trial, the former Manafort aide Rick Gates testified that Paul Manafort once emailed him during the Trump transition to try to get this CEO considered as a nominee for Secretary of the Army. That never happened, but Koch did previously serve on an economic advisory council to the Trump campaign. Additionally, the judge in this case, T.S. Ellis, did not do what the Mueller team wanted today, which was tell the jury that maybe he was too hard on the government's lawyers yesterday when he chastised them for talking about loans Paul Manafort didn't get instead of loans he did get. The government even filed a motion. They wrote this: the court's suggestion, however, that the government was unnecessarily spending time on a loan that Manafort did not receive undermines the well-established law on conspiracy, undercuts the charge in count 28, and is likely to confuse and mislead the jury. But just now, the court gavelled back in. There was no apology or explanation from the judge about what he said yesterday or why it took so long to get started today. Shep.
All right, thanks a lot. Let's go back to Caroline Polisi, who, as I mentioned, is a criminal defense attorney, has been following this thing. This delay. Most trials, there's a delay, and you're like, okay, there's another delay. Not with this, not under this rocket docket, not under Judge Ellis. This is unusual, and we know he has something that he's working on that's under seal.
Right. Well, he has been...
And we assume that's the other Russia investigation. But we don't know.
Yes. So recently there was a ruling to keep that sidebar under seal, the sidebar about whether or not the prosecutor had asked Gates whether or not he had talked with prosecutors about his work on the Trump campaign. Now, the defense raised an objection to that, and then they went to sidebar, and that talk has been placed under seal, the indication of which obviously being that Gates is providing ongoing assistance in an ongoing investigation. When you sign up to cooperate with the government, Shep, you don't get to pick and choose how you cooperate. You don't get to select, right, you don't get to select, say, I'm going to tell you this information but not that information. So it's a global cooperation agreement. The government is going to write a letter at Gates' sentencing to detail the amount of effort and assistance he gave to the government in overall prosecution. So there could very well be much more to Gates' cooperation. I think that's really the bombshell in this whole story here.
And if there's more to Gates' cooperation, it could extend across multiple fronts.
Yeah.
And the honest truth is we don't know exactly where Mueller is going with this. We do know of Manafort that he came to the campaign for free.
Yep.
That one of the first things he did was change the Republican platform to favor Russia.
Yep.
And then we know there was the Russia meeting, and we know that the president dictated, according to his own lawyers, a memo about what happened in that meeting, which turned out to be lacking in truth. And now here we are. So to say that isn't all related is just to ignore the obvious.
It's a mosaic, right? And there are pieces of the puzzle sort of coming into focus now. The tagline on this trial has always been, this has nothing to do with Manafort's time on the Trump team. I think it's getting up to the line there. We're seeing the man that came to work on the Trump campaign was a man very much in debt, in over his head, and needed money. And then he went to work for the Trump campaign for free. So you have to ask some questions about that.
And they're asking them.
Yeah.
Caroline, thank you.
Thanks.
On two different stories.
Thanks for having me.
Double the pay today. Ahead, did the Trump campaign offer hush money to Omarosa Manigault Newman after she got canned from the White House? There's a new report in the Washington Post today about what the White House says on Omarosa's book. And the college basketball coach accused of punching a man, and that punch led to his death. The coach from Wake Forest, the man from South Florida, his mother joins us live from Raleigh, North Carolina, right after this. We first met Omarosa on The Apprentice, President Trump's TV show, way back in 2004, if you can believe it. Been 14 years. She's been in the Trump orbit in one way or another pretty much ever since. Made her way to the campaign trail, was at the convention, then made her way to the White House. And the now former White House advisor, Omarosa Manigault Newman, claims she turned down $15 grand a month in hush money after she got fired late last year. That's according to the Washington Post, citing Omarosa's upcoming book. And she is torturous, we're told, in that book. She calls the president racist. And the Post reports Newman claims the Trump campaign made an offer through President Trump's campaign advisor and daughter-in-law, Lara Trump. She's Eric's wife. Omarosa says she turned down the offer. Of course, her time with President Trump goes back to The Apprentice, as I mentioned. The White House not commenting specifically on the hush money claim or any of the rest of it. But on the book in general, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, says this. Instead of telling the truth about all the good President Trump and his administration are doing to make America safe, prosperous, this book is riddled with lies and false accusations. She goes on, it's sad that a disgruntled former White House employee is trying to profit off these false attacks, and even worse, that the media would now give her a platform after not taking her seriously when she had only positive things to say about the president during her time in the administration. She was actually a guest on our program at that convention, and she talked just about that. Times have changed since then. The book is coming out. She'll be on one of the Sunday shows this weekend, and we'll learn the rest of the allegation pretty quick. A college basketball coach from Wake Forest has turned himself in after cops say he punched a stranger who later died in New York City. The Wake Forest assistant men's basketball coach Jamil Jones has now pleaded not guilty to misdemeanor assault. Now remember that, misdemeanor assault. Investigators say over the weekend Jones punched a man who then fell, smashed his head on the sidewalk in Long Island City just across the East River, never regained consciousness, and died. The victim was Shandor Sabo, who was in town for a family wedding. He's the one on the right in this picture. This photo taken just hours before that punch, which ended in death. Police say he was looking for an Uber driver after the wedding. It was all over the local papers here in New York City. He had gone up to a window and knocked on that window, thinking maybe this is the Uber, we're told, but banged on the window of that basketball coach. And cops say the coach got out, punched Sabo, and drove away. We reached out to Jones's attorney, invited him to appear on this newscast. We haven't heard back yet. But we did receive this statement earlier today from his attorney, quoting, "The Jones family stands by Jamil and his legal right to be presumed innocent in what is ultimately a tragic incident." Sabo's family took him off life support on Tuesday. His mother, Donna Kent, joins us now from Raleigh, North Carolina. Ms. Kent, I'm so very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
The punch resulted in a fall, which I understand resulted in your son's death. And now the charge is assault. And what's your position on this?
This is not assault. We were so shocked when they said it was an assault charge. When we went to see Shandor and saw what had happened to his face, this wasn't just a punch. This was a punch so hard that resulted in my son's teeth going through his lip. So for assault, and immediately when they called us, they knew that Shandor had passed. The surgeon said 99.9% sure he would never come back to us. The detective told us right when they saw Shandor, they knew it, and they treated it as a homicide immediately, not as an assault, because they said if they did an assault, there wouldn't be that many people looking into it. And so we're grateful that they felt it was a homicide from the very beginning and treated it that way. But for him to just have an assault charge was just shocking to us and disappointing.
It's certainly possible
when you're...
please, go ahead.
Sorry. When you're responsible for somebody's death, you hit them so hard, you leave, don't show up again for 5 days, and you think an assault is what you should be charged with, you're just wrong, and he knows it. I
think there was great surprise here in the tri-state area to hear that this basketball coach had left with someone so visibly hurt on the sidewalk and didn't even make a phone call, as far as we know.
No, he didn't. No phone call, nothing.
Tell us about Shandor.
And that's the least. Shandor was a person that you just hope that you have one chance in a lifetime to meet, because he was so rare. He was so loving, caring, the most generous person you would ever meet. One of his friends said he wore his heart on his sleeve. If he loved you, you knew it. He said even if he just liked the color of your shirt, he'd let you know. So he made everybody feel good about themselves. If there was somebody in need of anything, he was the first, without feeling put out, to do it for you. He would rescue an animal in the middle of a highway. There was always something at 35 in our house that he was rescuing, a lizard, a bird. He was just fun. So much fun to be around. He had the most incredible sense of humor. Such a giver. He loved to dive. He loved to spearfish. He was an amazing cook. He was just the best. He was so creative. He was at probably the best point in his life that he could be in. He was so happy. He was working for a media company where he was bringing accounts that were producing nothing just a year ago to producing hundreds of thousands of dollars in a year, accounts that people thought that would do nothing, but he was like, I'm going to make this account for this person and do something. So a hard worker, just didn't take anything for granted, but one thing we got to say, he lived life to the fullest. He lived so many lives, and I know God needed another angel, but I was just thankful that that angel was given to me for such a short time, because he was really special.
Ms. Kent, deepest condolences to your family. Thank you for being here, and all the best. The news continues in just a moment. Some breaking news now. Police in Canada are giving an update. This is a live look on this morning's deadly shooting there. At least 4 people died, including 2 police officers. Cops say one person is now in custody and getting treated for serious injuries. This happened in the city of Fredericton. That's in the province of New Brunswick, in the eastern part of the country, just across from Maine. But other than the number of those killed, police haven't really said much of anything at all. Again, this news conference has begun. We're monitoring it. We'll bring you the headlines. The shooting happened in a residential area. Cops locked it down at the time, but they say there is no threat there now. And as we get new details from this news conference, we'll get them to you right away. Russia is warning the United States against ramping up sanctions against the Russians. The Russian Prime Minister telling the Trump administration to stay away from his nation's banks or else.
If something like a ban on bank operations or currency use follows, it will amount to a declaration of economic war, and it will warrant a response with economic means, political means, and if necessary, other means. Our American friends should understand that.
And they should understand they started a cyber war. The Prime Minister did not specify what he meant by other means. His comments coming a couple of days after the State Department announced new penalties against Russia for using a chemical weapon to try to kill a former spy and his daughter on British soil. Both survived, and Russia has denied playing any part in the poisoning, as it denies playing any part in everything. The Fox Business Network's Blake Berman is live at the White House this afternoon. Blake?
Hi there, Shepard. And sanctions against Russia for the poisoning of Sergei Skripal and his daughter won't be coming officially until about a couple of weeks away at some point later this month. But Russia appears to be more worried about what could potentially come down the line, at least 90 days from now in early November, because the State Department says that a potential second batch of sanctions could hit then, and that could prohibit Americans from making bank loans to certain Russian entities. Keep in mind as well that there is also legislation bouncing around up on Capitol Hill that would target Russian-controlled banks. And the number two inside Russia, the Prime Minister there, Dmitry Medvedev, saying earlier today that if that were to occur, that would essentially amount to what he described as economic war. The State Department says the goal of sanctions is to change Russia's actions on the world stage.
We'd like to have a better relationship with the Russian government, recognizing that we have a lot of areas of mutual concern. It is a major country. We are a major country as well. And so when you have that, you are forced to have conversations with other governments. And sanctions is a way that we can try to encourage better behavior on the part of government.
State Department also revealed just a little while ago that the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke today with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. The State Department says that conversation was in part about the sanctions, and the U.S. reiterated that we seek a better relationship with Russia, as you heard from Heather Nauert there, Shepard.
Blake Berman at the White House, thank you. North Korea claims the United States is not living up to its end of the bargain. Again, North Korea is claiming this after President Trump and Kim Jong-un had their peace summit, if that's what you want to call it, in Singapore. Just a few months ago, the North Koreans made a big show of blowing up a nuclear test site, and last week they handed over what are believed to be the remains of American soldiers from the Korean War. But there have also been signs that North Korea is actually expanding its nuclear weapons program instead of scaling it back. Pyongyang is accusing some high-level officials within the U.S. administration, and that's what they're saying, no names, just some high-level officials within the U.S. administration, of going against President Trump's wishes and, quote, inciting international sanctions and pressure against North Korea, even though the regime claims it has halted nuclear ballistic missile tests. National Security Advisor John Bolton recently said that the United States has held up its end of the bargain, and he blamed North Korea for failing to take the necessary steps toward getting rid of its nukes. Jeff Mason is here, White House correspondent for Reuters, usually with us from Washington. Good to see you here.
Good to be here, Shep.
I don't know who this is a surprise to, that the North Koreans are rolling on with their nukes, but apparently they are, and now they're mad at us.
They're mad, and they're being very clever about how they express that anger by trying to sort of engender or lead to some divisions within the administration. And those divisions are probably between Ambassador Bolton, who said recently that North Korea had not done what it needed to stop its nuclear weapons, and Secretary Pompeo, who's been a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more urging of patience with North Korea.
And Is there a concern among any of those with whom you correspond that this will become a problem, or is this just the same old North Korea stall tactics?
Well, number one, in terms of concern, President Trump really wants this to succeed.
Yeah.
So if there's concern, it's related to that. Bolton has a history of being a real hawk on North Korea, so it's interesting.
Until about 5 minutes ago.
Indeed, but
seems like
his advisors have said his positions pre-administration really don't matter very much because now that he's in the government, he works for President Trump. But the fact that he was comfortable to say, look, North Korea isn't doing what it needs to on its nuclear weapons, that shows that hawkish nature is still there. So North Korea is trying to sort of probably hone in on that and say, look, this isn't what we signed up for in Singapore.
There was a time when there was great hope, at least in some quarters, that this agreement, this meeting there together might produce something. And then when it was looked at more closely by reporters and others, it appeared that the promises that the North Koreans made really sort of mirrored promises they'd made to other administrations.
That's exactly right. And that's a criticism that President Trump does not take well and does not want to hear. He feels strongly that they did something good by going to Singapore, but there is some evidence that those agreements may have been, not as far-reaching as he would like.
White House people have been in New Jersey with the president for the last, week or so, week and a half, as he's been taking a working vacation. How's Bedminster?
It's fine. It's
early
it's Bedminster, New Jersey, yes.
Yeah.
But it's been fine.
No golf, I'm guessing.
They say he's not even on vacation.
No, I meant for y'all.
Not for us.
Well, it's good to have you in New York.
Thanks. Good to be here.
See you soon, Jeff. Ahead, the case of the missing college student has new developments today. Molly Tibbetts disappeared weeks ago now. A theory of what happened the night she went missing as we go through the timeline. That's coming up.